When you sit in front of a console full of alerts, it can feel like everything is urgent and nothing is clear. The names and severities blur together, and you are left guessing which ones really matter. That is the gap that User and Entity Behavior Analytics, UEBA, is trying to close. UEBA learns what normal looks like for your people, service accounts, and systems, then shines a light on the logins, data access, and admin actions that are truly out of character. This episode is part of the Tuesday Insights feature from Bare Metal Cyber Magazine, developed by Bare Metal Cyber to help you turn behavior into better security decisions.
The simplest way to think about UEBA is as an extra layer of brains on top of data you already collect. You already have logs from your identity systems, endpoints, network devices, cloud platforms, and applications. Instead of treating each event in isolation, UEBA looks at patterns over time for each user and system. It pays attention to typical working hours, common locations, usual applications, and normal volumes of activity. Over time, it builds a baseline for what everyday life looks like in your environment, so that when something deviates sharply from that pattern, the signal stands out more clearly. UEBA is not a single magic product category, even if it sometimes appears that way in marketing. In many environments, it is a feature inside a security information and event management platform, an extended detection and response platform, or a cloud security suite. In others, it may be an add-on module or a separate analytics service that connects to your existing tools. In all those forms, its home in the stack is the detection and response layer, close to the places where you already collect, correlate, and react to security events. It does not replace identity and access management, endpoint detection, or data loss prevention. It rides alongside them and looks across them.
That placement in the environment also explains one of the biggest advantages of UEBA. Traditional rule sets tend to assume the same thresholds for everyone. More than a certain number of failed logins is bad. A particular type of alert is always critical, and so on. Real life is messier. A developer who often works late may generate patterns that look suspicious for a finance analyst. A global team may sign in from changing locations that would set off alarms for a local-only workforce. By focusing on behavior for each user and entity, UEBA allows you to move away from one-size-fits-all rules and towards context that matches how people actually work.
Under the hood, UEBA starts by ingesting large streams of events from your existing systems. Identity logs describe who is signing in, from where, and to what. Endpoint and server logs describe processes, connections, and local changes. Network telemetry shows flows between systems. Cloud logs add information about actions in management planes and workloads. For each user and entity, the analytics engine learns typical hours of activity, common destinations, usual devices, and normal amounts of data touched. That baseline does not have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough to tell ordinary noise from a real change in behavior.
As new activity flows in, the engine compares it to what it knows about that account or system. A single odd event might not get much attention. A login from a new IP might be fine if it fits within a person's travel pattern and is followed by normal work. But when several unusual factors combine, the risk rises. Maybe the login happens at a strange hour, from a new country, followed by access to sensitive applications the user rarely touches, along with a spike in data downloads. UEBA ties those details together and expresses them as a higher risk level for that identity or host, which then feeds into dashboards, queues, or playbooks. The flow usually sits beside traditional correlation rules rather than replacing them. Rule-based detections still catch known bad patterns, such as specific malware signatures or well-understood attack steps. UEBA adds a second view. Not does this match a known pattern, but is this normal for this actor? Together, they give analysts two complementary ways to spot trouble. That combined view comes with assumptions, though. You need logs that are consistent and comprehensive, identity data that correctly maps accounts to real people and services, and a way to tie events back to the right entity every time. When those foundations are weak, the analytic layer suffers.
Once UEBA is in place, the most common starting point is credential misuse. If an attacker gets valid credentials, basic checks may not complain because the actions look legitimate on the surface. Behavior stands out more clearly. Unusual logging locations, access to systems outside a person's normal job, and sudden bursts of data access form a pattern that a human might struggle to spot by eye, but that an analytics exon can flag. Analysts can then focus on those high-risk identities instead of wading through page after page of routine failures and alerts. Another everyday area where UEBA earns its keep is monitoring privileged and service accounts. These accounts often have wide access and generate constant noise. Simple thresholds either flood you with alerts or miss slow, careful abuse. By learning what normal admin work and normal service account behavior look like, UEBA can highlight when a domain administrator starts touching new types of systems, or when a service account suddenly reads large volumes of sensitive data it has never accessed before. For many teams, tightening visibility around these high-impact accounts becomes a quick win.
As organizations grow more comfortable, they start using UEBA in more strategic ways. It can support insider risk programs by highlighting unexpected access or data movement by insiders who already have some level of permission. It can help in cloud-heavy environments by drawing attention to unusual combinations of cloud management actions, network changes, and identity use. Threat hunters may filter their searches by top-risk entities and then walk through related events to decide whether they are seeing an attack, a misconfiguration, or the early stages of a process change. In some mature setups, UEBA scores even feed adaptive controls, such as requiring extra verification when a risk score is high.
When it is aligned with how the organization works, UEBA can deliver real benefits. It improves detection quality by surfacing behaviors that do not fit ordinary patterns, particularly for identity-driven threats. It supports analysts' focus by grouping events around risky entities rather than scattering them across many views. It can make life easier in a security operations center by turning a fire hose of raw alerts into a more curated stream of who or what deserves attention right now. Over time, that can shorten the time between the first sign of strange behavior and the moment someone starts asking deeper questions.
Those gains come with trade-offs. UEBA usually depends on ingesting and processing large amounts of data, which means spending on storage and compute. It exposes the strengths and weaknesses of your identity practices because the analytics only work if accounts and devices are well mapped and consistently logged. It demands time from analysts and engineers to tune models, review false positives and false negatives, and agree on what risk scores should trigger which responses. Teams that expect to turn it on and walk away often find it either too noisy to trust or too quiet to be useful.
There are also clear limits you have to accept. UEBA cannot see what you do not log. If key systems are missing from your telemetry, behavior in those areas will remain invisible. It struggles in environments where work patterns shift constantly because baselines never settle. And because many offerings are labeled as artificial intelligence, there is a temptation to treat their scores as absolute truth. In practice, those scores are one more signal that needs to be interpreted, compared with other evidence, and understood in the context of how your organization operates.
Failure modes tend to look familiar across different organizations. One of the most common is the tool installed, process unchanged story. The platform is deployed, baselines are built, dashboards appear, but nobody updates triage procedures or playbooks. Alerts glow in a separate screen that analysts rarely open, and there is no clear owner deciding which use cases matter most. Over time, people forget why the tool was introduced, and it becomes a line item on a budget rather than a living part of detection and response.
Data quality can create another kind of failure. Inconsistent user identifiers, shared accounts that mask individual behavior,
Misconfigured logging or missing cloud telemetry all weaken the models UEBA relies on. The system might assign risk based on partial pictures of activity, leading to confusing or obviously wrong scores. When analysts see enough of those, they stop trusting the output and rely only on the tools they already know. At that point, the organization has the costs of an analytics platform without the benefits.
Shallow adoption also shows up in how teams talk about UEBA. If it is described mainly as a checkbox feature or an experiment running in a corner, it probably is not driving real outcomes. Deep adoption looks different. There is a named owner for the platform, a short list of priority use cases, and clear expectations about what a high-risk score means for an account or system. Analysts know which playbook to follow when a particular threshold is crossed. Managers track metrics like time to detect compromised accounts or the proportion of identity-related alerts that turn out to be real issues.
Healthy signals are visible in both processes and results. When UEBA is working well, you see investigations where an unusual pattern surfaced by the system led directly to a real finding that would have been hard to spot through rules alone. You see regular reviews where noisy detections are trimmed, new use cases are added based on recent incidents, and identity data quality is improved to support better analytics. You see fewer surprises in areas where behavior-based monitoring is strongest, because strange activity is caught closer to when it starts, not after it has become an incident report.
At its heart, user and entity behavior analytics is about paying attention to how familiar actors behave and noticing when that behavior changes in ways that might matter. It lives in the detection layer, not as a replacement for your existing tools, but as a way to use their data in a more context-aware fashion. When you pair it with good logging, solid identity hygiene, and clear playbooks, it can help your team pick out genuine risk from the everyday noise that fills so many dashboards.
As you think about your own environment, the most useful question is not whether you have UEBA as a product label. The more practical question is whether you have a way to notice when key users, service accounts, and systems start acting out of character, and whether those signals actually change how you respond. If the answer is no, then behavior-based analytics may be a lever worth exploring. Even small steps toward understanding normal patterns can make it easier to spot the weird stuff early before it grows into something far harder to manage. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.